I'm actually pointed in the same direction I started in. Yeah.
Wait, what?
Last week I observed how whenever I pray, I'll be praying and all of a sudden I'll like open my eyes and I'm like over here. It's just like, whoa. And so like I closed my eyes and I was actually pointing forward. Okay, so we're on the Thrive Over Survive. In small groups last week, we asked if you guys had any suggestions for topics. The small group leaders asked you. And so tonight's lesson is one of those suggestions. It came from the middle school girls small group, and it's on the topic of cussing, on profane language. So that is what I will be addressing tonight. And so it's funny because I grew up, and for me, butt was a bad word.
Yeah, that's what our dad said.
B-U-T-T was a bad word. Was it a bad word for your dad?
It is changed.
Yeah, he told us.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's the same with us.
It's
Oh, I
incredible.
still can't
So
say
you
butt.
still can't say butt?
You can't?
I
can't
can't
say it.
yeah.
I can't say it.
Yeah, I think at one point, and what's incredible is like the A word, I see it on commercials. Like it's just on everyday television. It's crazy. And
Really?
yeah, but it it was really hard not being able to say butt. I don't know if you guys can relate at all, especially like in football. Like, Coach, I got knocked on my bottom. Like, and everyone is just cussing all the time, like. But I know the kind of awkward struggle that is, because people who aren't saved, who don't have a redeemed perspective, a word is just a word. Like who cares if I say, D-A-M-N versus darn? Like, how is that making a difference towards anyone? That doesn't affect anyone? Who cares? When you think about if there's no Bible influence in their life, any Christian influence, it's just like words are just words. And so it's really difficult, I found anyway, to just kind of even be able to relate with people in the first place, because I remember one time it was in the locker room. I don't remember why. Someone made me mad and I was like, man, you dummy. And then the dude was like, oh, you got me, dummy. Like it carries no weight. And then I'm sitting there going, man, I just want to be able to like say something that would actually like get to him. And then I'm like, wait, why am I wanting to offend him? That's weird. And so then I had to regress and that whole messiness. But anyway, I kind of know this awkward struggle that maybe made this get addressed, or when you have friends who cuss a lot and it's just really annoying. But I think the important thing for us is knowing what the Bible has to say on it. Because the thing is that I feel like with cussing, it's one of those where, because there are not completely a whole lot of specific teachings in the Bible on what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say, I feel like it leaves a lot of room for judgmentalism and legalism, where people will assume that you're like less godly because you choose to use a word that other people don't. Just like, I don't think my parents ever assumed I was less godly for using the word, if I ever used the word but it's like you could easily have someone else from a different family who says but, and just be like, oh, how could they? And so I feel like a lot of times cussing almost becomes more of an issue of pride and legalism and kind of a Pharisee's mindset than it actually is just about cussing. And so what's really important for us is to go to the Word, and what does the Word have to say about cussing? Because beyond that, you need to understand that then that's just your personal conviction, and for you to apply your personal conviction to someone else, that's going beyond the Word, that's going beyond the Bible, and that's just being judgmentalism. Our guideline for living moral lives is the Word of God. As soon as you go outside of that, you have the Pharisees. That's what the Pharisees did. They added all these extra rules that were unnecessary and were legalistic, and it pushed people away, and those were the people that Jesus disliked. That's why it's important to live according to the Word of God, not beyond it. Okay, so for us to know how to handle our speech as Christians, Gabe, I feel like The foundational verse that we need to go is Ephesians 4:29. Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification according to the need of the moment, so that it will give grace to those who hear. This to me is the most explicit teaching on not cussing. Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth. That's pretty straightforward. And the context of this passage of Ephesians 4 is just towards the back half of chapter 4. Paul is just kind of going through a list of different what would you say, admonishments, different, like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. He's just saying, you are mature believers, here's like a list of things that you need to do, and this is just something on the list. Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth. Now, what's difficult about this, it's very straightforward. Obviously, we're not supposed to say bad words, but what is considered unwholesome? Because it doesn't say, let no F word, S word, A word, blah, 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 proceed from your mouth. It just says, let no unwholesome. How do we know as Christians what is considered unwholesome? And this is where the kind of gray area is. And so I can think of three main places for us to be able to dictate what is considered wholesome and what is considered unwholesome. Gabe, next slide. Number one is your parents. You guys are youth. This is youth group. You're all youth. You live in your parents' homes. So children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. That's pretty straightforward. The umbrella statement is if your parents consider it unwholesome, then it is unwholesome. And if you're using that word, then not only would I say that you're using an unwholesome word, but you're being disobedient to your parents as well. I mean, so like if your parents have a rule for your house that you're not supposed to say a word, like but, then don't say the word. That's really simple. And so all other vocabulary should be under the umbrella of your parents' home. And that's a good starting point. So we have the starting umbrella of your parents' home. Now we move to the next section in. And to me, Gabe, that is 1 Timothy 4:12. Let no one look down on you, your youthfulness, but rather in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity, show yourself an example of those who believe. This to me is getting towards society. It's looking outward. Let no one look down and show yourself an example. And so this is, especially for those of you who are going to be moving outside of your parents' home and that umbrella kind of comes down and it's up for you to decide, this is then your starting place, actually. And it's always dangerous to practice your biblical beliefs based off of society. But this is just this is just a starting point. This is just dangerous. This is just a starting point. Because you know that if society has decided that a word is unwholesome, it's going to be unwholesome. So, this is just the foundational thing, if they have to increase the rating of a movie for it, it's probably an unwholesome word. So that's the starting point, is society. Now, if you're living in your parents' home, the starting point is umbrella and then society, but you're going to be moving out someday. Once I want to equip you for your entire future. The umbrella comes down, you're on your own. The starting point is then, okay, what is considered unwholesome in society? Gabe, and number 3, James 4:17, therefore, to one who knows the right thing to do and does not do it, to him it is sin. And this is where we come down to the last one, which to me is just your relationship with the Lord. This is something where because the Bible is not very explicit, it does say, do not take the Lord's name in vain. That's one of the 10 commandments. So that's pretty specific. Don't say the Lord's name in vain. But as far as all other words, it really comes down to between you and your relationship with God. What do you feel like God is saying is inappropriate and appropriate? And this is where it's really important, why I'm always encouraging you, take a hold of your relationship now. These are the type of things where you graduate from high school, that umbrella of your parents come down, you're just choosing, you're having to decide what is appropriate vocabulary, and the two things that you're looking for is society and just your relationship with God. Things can really go haywire there unless you're established in your relationship and you really know these words are not okay and these words are not okay. And you're having to pray about these different things about words and the way that you value them. Now, that is kind of the main sort of thing on you deciding on what is unwholesome and not unwholesome. Some quick, I suppose, food for thought. Concerning your friends who cuss, you are not going to you're not going to bring someone to Jesus by making them stop cussing. You are going to make them stop cussing by bringing them to Jesus. I used to play football with a well-meaning Christian friend, and I would have my unsaved Christian friends there, and they would cuss, and then my well-meaning Christian friend would be like, guys, stop cussing. And a lot of times later, I'd actually have to apologize to my unsaved friends and be like, sorry guys, he's just passionate about it or whatever. For me, I choose to not have my unsaved friends stop cussing. I don't ask them to stop cussing. I'm not going to expect them to act like Jesus if they don't have Jesus in their life. To me, the goal is getting to their heart, because as soon as you start saying, don't do this and don't do that and don't do that, Christianity becomes a set of rules to them. If you can get at their heart and show that you care about them, then from there, they enter into this relationship with Jesus. They care. And then it's the whole thing from there, where I always use the illustration of marriage. When you get married to someone, you're not going to say, oh, I love you for my whole life except for this little side thing over here. That's disgusting. If they really love Jesus, their language will start getting cleaned up because of no unwholesome word proceeding from your mouth. They'll want to follow his commandments because they love him. So my suggestion, don't force your unsaved friends to not cuss. Now, a quick disclaimer on that, there's also respect. So when I would invite unsaved friends to youth group, I would talk to them and be like, look, man, I don't mind, if you cuss around me, but we're going to like a church event thing, so just try not to say any words that you think would not be appropriate. Or we're going to be hanging out at my parents' house, and so just don't be cussing. I have my younger brother there. This is a quick story. I had a friend who he had. Do you guys know what little man syndrome is? Whoa. Okay, we have one yes. Little man syndrome is when there's this person who's short, that like they're
He's a little
really short, yeah, and so they're a little insecure about it, and so they act very big
Macho.
because they're so small. They talk themselves up like they're so great because they're so small, And so I had this friend who was pretty short, and he had major little man syndrome, and we were playing football in his backyard or another friend's backyard, and David was there. Now, this is when I was like in middle school. David's 4 years younger than me, so let's just say I was 6th grade. David's in 2nd grade, and he's playing football with us, and my friend keeps cussing. I'm like, dude, this 2nd grader's playing with us. You gotta stop it. And he walks up to David and goes, welcome to the big leagues. He's like, oh my gosh, this guy's, little man syndrome. So then I get a little frustrated, and on the next kickoff, I take the ball, and this was one of the most satisfying moments. And I was running, and usually in football, I kind of like squirrel around, try and get around people, but I was just like, this guy's smaller than me. He's puny. He's a little midget guy. I just like ran over him, and it felt so good. And he's like, dang, what was that about? I was like, welcome to the big leagues. I was like, yeah, this is great.
Welcome to the big leagues.
Yeah. Anyway, so
awesome.
we are going to discuss. I feel like because this is kind of like a language is a gray area, I feel like it's really important to have small groups. So we're going to.
Were there 4?
Huh?
Were there 4? Is that what you said? 4 reasons?
3.
Oh. Okay.
I said parents, society, and your relationship with the Lord.
Gotcha.
Now we're going to break off into small groups.